Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today we are going to choose a classic to read. I've mentioned it many times on the channel and there are many videos about it, and I will leave the playlist where I talk about all things related to this in the cards and in the description. But in case you are new here, I have spent many years collecting the Penguin English Library editions of classics, and I have a lifelong goal that I would like to read all of the books in this set. It's not something that I want to do imminently in the next couple of years. As I said, it is a lifelong goal. However, I should be making an increased dent in that TBR list, just little by little chipping away at it. And one of the excuses I often make about not getting round to reading books on that TBR is that some of the classics on that list are just really long, and I struggle to devote my time to long books, whether that is classics or otherwise. However, that is purely an excuse. Like, this is fully on me. I'm just making excuses because I also have a lot of very short classics on that list. So I have 7 books here that are part of the Penguin English Library collection that are all under 300 pages. There are also many Penguin English Library books that are under 300 pages that I've already read. So I may do a video talking about those, or maybe when I've read a few more of these, we can do a short classics rundown. But what we're going to do today is read the first line of all of these books, and whatever first line draws us in the most, that's the classic that I'm going to read next. And we are judging this based purely on that first line, so nothing to do with any of the authors, if I've read any books from them before, if I know anything about the plot of these books. Nothing to do with that. It is just purely the first line, and I'm really taking inspiration from Lauren over Lauren at the Books for the first line challenge that she does. So yes, this will be based purely on the first line and nothing else. So I'm going to kick things off with A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. Now, I have read sections of this book before at university, but I've not read the whole thing, and I certainly don't remember what the first line is. So the first line of chapter 1 is, "The Signora had no business to do it," said Miss Bartlett. No business at all. That doesn't really tell me much. I guess maybe we have a sense of place with the word Signora, but I'm not really getting anything more from just that first line. But it is the first one that we've read, so at the moment, this is in the lead. Then we have The Call of the Wild by Jack London. So this starts with like 4 lines of verse, but I am going to base this so it's a fair kind of contest on the first line of full prose. Buck did not read the newspapers, or he would have known that trouble was brewing. Not alone for himself, but for every Tidewater dog. Strong of muscle and with warm long hair from Puget Sound to San Diego. I couldn't really fully follow that sentence. There was like a lot of commas, a lot of clauses in that sentence. Buck did not read the newspapers, or he would have known that trouble was brewing. Not alone for himself, but for every Tidewater dog. Strong of muscle and with warm long hair from Puget Sound to San Diego. I mean, I'm certainly getting more intrigue and tension from that line than I did from the first one, so this is now in the lead. Then we have Washington Square by Henry James. The first line of this reads, "During a portion of the first half of the present century, and more particularly during the latter part of it, there flourished and practiced in the city of New York a physician who enjoyed perhaps an exceptional share of the consideration which, in the United States, has always been bestowed upon distinguished members of the medical profession." Again, just another really long sentence that like you get slightly lost in reading. But there are lots of things about this that are intriguing me. I mean, New York is something that I find interesting. It's something that does feel like I want to know more. Why is there so much focus being put on this physician? I have questions that I would like to be answered. Trying to weigh up between these two. I think it's this one that is more intriguing to me, but the writing style of it worries me slightly if there's going to be that many like clauses in all of the sentences, such long sentences. So far, it has just been each sentence in each book is taking the top spot. Next, I have The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner by James Hogg. Okay, so I'm slightly confused by this because there is a section that is over 80 pages that is called the editor's narrative. And then there's over 100 pages of Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Sinner, and then another shorter section that is also the editor's narrative. And I'm like, is this an essay that's included in this edition? Is it part of this work? I'm not entirely clear, but I'm going to read the first sentence in the editor's narrative. "It appears from tradition, as well as some parish registers still extant, that the lands of Dalcastle, or Dalcastel as it is often spelled, were possessed by a family member by the name of Colwyn about 150 years ago, and for at least half a century previous to that period. Well, whether or not that is part of the story or otherwise, that's certainly not the best first line, so we're not going to be going with that one. Next, I have Sanditon by Jane Austen. Okay, so I know enough about Jane Austen to know what's going on in this edition of this book. It is not just Sanditon included in this. There is also Lady Susan and the Watsons, so there's multiple works in here. So if I was going to read this, I would read all 3 of the works included in it in order for me to tick it off my TBR. But I don't know whether I should start by reading the first line of the title story, which is Sanditon, or if I should read the first line of the first work that is included, which is Lady Susan. But I do know that that is an epistolary novella, so it's told in a series of letters, so that might not be the best first line to go with. I think I will just go for the first line in the whole book, which is the first line in Lady Susan. So it is a letter. My dear brother, I can no longer refuse myself the pleasure of profiting by your kind invitation when we last parted, of spending some weeks with you at Churchill, and therefore, if quite convenient to you and Mrs. Vernon to receive me at present, I shall hope within a few days to be introduced to a sister whom I have so long desired to be acquainted with. Again, turns out to not be a problem which sentence I read, because that's not beating the first line of Washington Square. But similarly, really long sentence. We have another E.M. Forster book, and that is Where Angels Fear to Tread. And the first line of that is, and the first line of this is, they were all at Charing Cross to see Lilia off. Philip, Harriet, Irma, Mrs. Herriton herself. Okay, the positives are, I'm glad that that's a shorter sentence. I have a sense of place. I know Charing Cross. I want to know where Lilia is going. I do have questions. However, my interest is not piqued enough. And finally, we have The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton. The first line is, the suburb of Saffron Park lay on the sunset side of London, as red and ragged as a cloud of sunset. I do like this first line. I do enjoy the sense of place that I've got. I like the sunset, I like London, but I don't feel like it has given me as much intrigue as I had with Washington Square by Henry James. So I think this is the one we are going with. Now that we have chosen this, based purely on the first line, I will concede that there is a slight problem in how much issues I've had with long run-on sentences in so many of these books, and in this one that I've ended up picking, because I have read The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, and I do remember hating how long and meandering his sentences were. But I did say that I did not want to bring in any of my preconceived ideas of the novels or of the authors when I was choosing it based purely on the first line. And while there were things that I didn't like about the first line in this book, it was definitely the one that intrigued me the most. Now that I've picked it, let's read the blurb. James's masterly novel set in 19th century New York society is a devastating study of innocence destroyed. When plain Catherine Sloper acquires a dashing, determined suitor, her father, convinced the young man is a fortune teller, decides to end their romance. Torn between her desire to win her father's approval and her passion for the first man to notice her, Catherine faces an agonizing dilemma and becomes all too aware of the limits on her freedom. Now that does sound really interesting to me, so I'm now feeling more positive about the reading experience of this one. If you've read it, do leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought of it. Or if you think I should have picked another book instead, do let me know as well, because that might be the thing that encourages me to pick it up next. Do let me know down in the comments as well if you want to see more videos on my classics collection. Should I use more first line challenges or different kinds of challenges to pick what classic I read next? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And if you want to let me know you're here but you don't have anything particular to say, leave me an apple emoji to represent the Big Apple, New York. That's it for me today. I hope you're doing well, and I will speak to you in my next video.